Hello. So, time for part 2 of the 5 elder stars, or 5 elder planets, or the Gorosei, or the 5 angry old men who are in control of the world government and the world in general. Um, well, the 5 who we believe are in charge of the world government, or at least the majority of the world believes. Um, so, also, dog in the background. There, you can kind of see her now. She's just relaxing on the bed. So last week I did the video where I talked about kind of the different real world references that are, going with each of the Gorosei in regards to breaking down their names and kind of talking about their specific individual positions and things like that. And, real world things that go into comparisons and stuff like that. And that took quite a while. This video today, I am actually going to go through and do the history of the Gorosei, as in what we've seen of them in the story. Their interactions with other characters, conversations they've had that we have been privy to, things like that. And a little bit more about specifically the kind of power that they wield. So I went through a whole bunch of the definitions and stuff like that for what they are and what they represent and different things like that last week. So I'm not really going to do too much of that this week. Although I will, of course, go over because it is part of their power system. The 5 elders are politically the highest ranked known entities within the world government. The only other one that we as an audience, and very few within the world government, within the world itself, know about that is above them is Imu-sama, which I will be talking about next week. In regards to the Gorosei, of course, as heads of the world government, they are the heads of one of the 3 great power systems within the world, which of course were the Marines, the world government setup, and the warlords, and the Yonko. Power has shifted a little bit since the warlords have been disbanded, and now the 3 great powers are kind of down to 2 great powers. The Gorosei also have the ability to have the cipher pull agencies and the Marines work directly for them. They also used to have direct control, to a degree, over the warlords. Again, been disbanded, not really going to get mentioned too much in this beyond a few bits here and there where they're discussing things that happened with the warlords. And of course, as I stated last week, they're the characters in One Piece that have gone the longest between introduction and receiving an actual name. They were introduced in Jaya. They finally got their names during Egghead Island. 20-some whatever years later. Yeah, long freaking time. So, in regards to the Gorosei, we are aware that they are celestial dragons. They are descendants of the 20 original families that founded the world government and 19 that formed the celestial dragons that became the founders of the celestial dragons. We know their family names now: Saturn, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and Jupiter. But we do not know specifically which countries their individual ancestors would have been the original rulers of at the time. And we also do not know if the Gorosei, if that position is something that gets passed down from father to son, or grandfather to grandson, or uncle to nephew, or within the same families. We are not aware of that. I do have a video where I talked about the fact that I think that Homing may have initially been a candidate for a Gorosei, but then obviously A, he left, and B, he just proved to be far too naive for them to be able to mold into a Gorosei, which I discuss in that video a bit more. But one of the other things is there's, of course, the theories that, the Gorosei are immortal because they do not really appear to have aged at all during the whole time frame that we've seen them. Even compared to 22 years ago, during the O'Hara incident. While we didn't get a huge amount of ability to see them, they were mostly in silhouette, and in silhouette when they met Vegapunk, there's still this, they still resemble themselves now. They don't really seem to have changed much. Now, I don't particularly think the Gorosei are immortal, mostly because given conversations they've had, they indicate that, they don't know everything about what happened in the Void Century. Well, they know some things, probably that were told to them by previous members of the Gorosei, or possibly by Im-sama himself, or themselves. Like, they knew about the Gomu Gomu no Mi being the, Hito Hito no Mi model Nika, but they also talked about it like it was a legend that had been passed down to them. So if they were the original Gorosei that had been part of the original founding of the world government, then, that would have been a bit more of a harder thing to hide. First of all, because all the different fleet admirals and admirals in general that would have interacted with them over the centuries that the Marines were around after they developed the Marines would have noticed that, hey, these guys don't age. These guys are the same ones that were here, during my predecessor's time and his predecessor's time and his predecessor's time, and none of them seem to age. So I don't believe that the Gorosei are immortal. Im-sama, that's a different story. That's a different story. But they do seem to have knowledge of the Void Century and the Poneglyphs and the Great War and the Great Kingdom. While they may not know everything about them, they know at least some bits that they know that they do not want the rest of the world to find out about. Hence why they prevented Clover from saying the name of the Great Kingdom and different things like that. So there's some stuff there. They, of course, also have authority over Impel Down and the Marines and the justice system and different things like that. As I made the comparison in the previous video, while the 50 world leaders, the 50 kings that gather together for revelry, and the other 170 some nations that make up the world government, well, they're similar to representing the, United Nations. The 5 Gorosei are this, the 5 elders are this representation of like the World Security Council, that they kind of hold more sway over everything. Which the World Security Council is part of the United Nations, but they hold a fair amount of sway within it since they are comprised of 5 of the biggest countries in the world, or the 5 global superpowers at the time. We, of course, have members of the Gorosei. I did much more in depth on these. We have Saint J. Garcia Saturn, who is, of course, the godhead or the God King or whatever they wanted to call him of the science and defense. We have Marcus Mars, who is the godhead of the environment. We have Topman Mercury, who is the godhead of justice. We have Ethan Baron V. Nosjuro, who is the godhead of finance, and Saint Shepherd Jew Peter as the warhead, god lord, whatever, of agriculture. So they each have different things that they represent, but they all seem to be very well versed in different things that are going on in the world. They probably are the ones that receive the majority of the true reports that come in from the cipher polls and from the Marines themselves and from the admirals. And I guess stuff from the warlords, if there's anything that the warlords needed to report at the time. Plus, the world government, probably also beyond the cipher poll, have additional spies in other areas where they keep track of things. So they're the ones that are aware of a good chunk of what actually is going on in the world. While they also get information from what Morgan's prints, they also are aware of like, okay, well, we had Morgan's twist that for something that would be a little bit more better on our shoulders, look better on us, like what happened with Crocodile in Alabasta, and how he was actually taken out by Smoker and Tashigi for the rest of the world to know, as opposed to it being Luffy. Which is, of course, the reverse of what ends up happening on, Dressrosa 2 years later, where Luffy is very publicly stated to be the one that defeated Doflamingo. And then, of course, they're very upset when Fujitora then, blames himself and blames the world government for the fact that they allowed Doflamingo to stay in power for so long. So there is that. And as opposed to the other world nobles that we are, of course, introduced to, Charlos and his brand, The Gorosei do not seem to be as overly indulgent as the other ones do. They are definitely much more world knowledgeable, much more sophisticated acting as far as we can tell. They still don't really particularly respect humans, given Saint Saturn, J. Garcia Saturn's, comment about humans are like insects. They will continue to breed no matter what. They can be replaced, in his opinions about the archaeologists and the scientists and everything like that. They hold still similar ideals, but they also see the value in keeping people alive. But they also have to make sure that the rest of the celestial dragons are given their dues and are given, their gold and their everything else that keeps them happy, so they don't rise up against the Gorosei. Also, we don't know the exact selection setup for how they choose who's going to be the next Gorosei. It could be something within the same family. There could have been female Gorosei in the past. It could be different ones where, yes, they are all from the same family, but it's just passed down, and they pick the best one within the family for it. We're not sure. That may be something that gets explained later by Oda. We, of course, know that they have, have full fealty and will obey Im-sama to, the nth degree of, committing more and more genocide, considering he's probably also the one that allowed them to destroy Ohara 22 years ago. Everything happened there, allowed them to have the Buster Call, and same thing with Enies Lobby. Islands like Enies Lobby can be rebuilt. After they're destroyed, they can be rebuilt. The Gorosei, of course, they're the ones that sent the giant sky laser, to Lulusia, everything like that. They ordered that. They're fine with it. J. Garcia Saturn is currently dealing with Egghead and is figuring out a way to, have to deal with all of that. So there's a lot that goes there. They, of course, have, will bow completely and be completely subservient to Imu-sama, even at times where they appear to question him. It's still just kind of like well, we just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, sir. We'll still do it. We just wanted to make sure that was, something you were aware of. Boss, employees sucking up to the boss. They don't have the best relationship with Sakazuki at the moment, mostly because Sakazuki does not like it that they allowed the warlords to continue to be warlords and different things like that. And then, of course, the warlords are expanded and other things like that where Sakazuki does not like them. Sakazuki just wants to go out and destroy all of the different pirate crews and, all of the Yonko and everything like that, and they won't let him do it. They do not have respect for the Nefeltari family, given, that they are, they were ones that were invited to be celestial dragons and turned that down. It's like, oh, you turned down the invitation to my great grandfather's party. I don't like you now. That's basically the vibes we get there. They see them as traitors. Obviously, they see Luffy as a huge thorn in their side at this point in time, given everything that's happened between him punching Charlos and his father being a captain of, being the commander of the Revolutionary Army, with him having Nico Robin on his crew, with him now having the Nika Devil Fruit that has now been awakened and everything, and he can use its power. And the fact that now he has Vegapunk and, everything happening there. So Luffy has become a huge thorn in their side. And then, of course, they had the enemies when it came to, Clover and the other scholars on Ohara and everything, which is, of course, where Robin comes into play there as well. Sabo is definitely a thorn in their side, considering that he knows about Im at this point in time, and that he is now able to, that he has told Dragon and Ivankov about Im. And then we do not know 100% about how their relationship with Shanks works. He had a meeting with them, and a member of his family, Garing Figureland, is, like the captain of the Gods Knights. There's definitely a connection there, but we don't know the exact connection. Could be his father, could be his grandfather, could be his uncle. We don't know. We'll find out. But there's at least a familial connection there. And then going into the actual history of them, Also, I'll go into their transformations a little bit more when we get down to that. So, the history of the Gorosei, we do not know the exact time frame that each of them became members of the Gorosei. We know that the same ones seem to have been the Gorosei 22 to 25 years ago or so, when Vegapunk became, joined forces with the world government after he left Mads and it disbanded and everything. We know that he met them there after that, and that he started to work for the world government. We don't really have too much other information there. We know that he actually did go to Marijois and meet them, since we see that in the cover page, and he also mentions that he has met with them in person. And then we, of course, have the Ohara incident, which is kind of our first big major indicator that these guys are definitely not good. I mean, we get some bits about that. When we first see them in Jaya, they're like, okay, who are these old guys? But the flashback that we get with Ohara, where we get to see them interacting with Clover, where they're the ones that allowed, CP9 to go there with, Spondine, and that they have the ability to have the Buster Call and everything. And, we see that they're willing to go after these archaeologists just because they're studying history, and just because it's history that they don't like. Well, that doesn't ring any bells at all in regards to things that are going on in American schools right now. Nope, not in the slightest. And, they don't want they don't want the poneglyphs to be found. They don't want them to be translated. They don't want them to be researched. And, while they have to a degree a bit of an amicable conversation with Clover at first, that then very much shifts when Clover gets to the point where he's about to say the name of the true kingdom of the Great Kingdom, and they're just like, shoot him, and Spondine shoots him, and then Clover is injured. And then, of course, that's when they start the Buster Call on the island, and, leads to all of the archaeologists on the island getting killed, Robin escaping thanks to Kuzan, and then Saul eventually surviving after he gets frozen and then thawed out, and very badly, probably both frostbitten and burned, given the circumstances and stuff. But they're, of course, unaware that Saul is alive. But this is where we get kind of our first taste of what the Gorosei, what the world government is willing to do against the people who have the ability to A, read the poneglyphs, and B, what they're willing to do in order to keep their secret safe, to keep the secret of the world government safe. Hi, are you okay? You okay, pretty girl? Pretty girl. My pretty girl. And there's not really too much else we know. We know that about 14 years ago, after the Ohara incident, they decide that Spondum is able to go to them and convince them that he should be allowed to go and look for the blueprints for Pluton, even though, I mean, they are probably well aware that the ancient weapons are very much real, given the fact that they have access to a giant sky laser. And that is probably a similar thing to Uranus and stuff. Of course, we don't know exactly when the sky laser was developed. We don't know if that was something 100% done by Vegapunk and then reawakened by him, that they had in the past, and then he reawakened it with, power cells, thanks to York. But they want, Pluton, having Pluton on their side and being able to give those blueprints to Vegapunk for him to build said giant ship for war and destruction, would make sense that they would be willing to put a little bit of like, okay, you go and see if you can find it. Spondum fails, of course, and gets his face broken by Frankie, and then Tom gets captured. I still hesitate to say Tom is dead. I don't necessarily know if Tom is dead. He may not have necessarily died at Ennis Lobby or at Impel Down over the last, over that time frame, but he may have been captured, held captive and interrogated and then killed, or he may be someone that we end up coming across later on and he's not actually dead, but he's still been captive by the world government, considering he is a fishman and he is a shipwright and an architect and everything like that. Him being the one, okay, I hadn't thought of that. Him possibly being the one in, that is one that developed like the moving streets and stuff like that are in Marijois, being forced to do things like that. That would be a very good reason why they would keep Tom alive. So I'm just pointing that out there. That wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, but I'm pointing that out. I don't know why I didn't think about that before, but I hadn't clicked the puzzle pieces together. If that's what Oda wanted to do, that would make perfect sense. Although, admittedly, the moving sidewalks is something that Vegapunk could have very easily developed, and then they just, put them into slave labor. Not that Vegapunk knows that. Or maybe he does and he just can't do anything about it. Then we get to canonically the first time that we get to see the Gorosei, and that is during the Jaya arc. They are currently, at the time frame during the Jaya arc, they are discussing this meeting between Shanks and Whitebeard. And we get them, I think they're just introduced as like the five elders. I don't remember if at that point in time if we get that they're the highest authority in the world or not. But they seem to be rather important, even given that time frame. I'm just like, well, who are these five old men? They're going to be very important to the story. And I have a snoring puppy in the background, but that's okay. So if you hear her snoring on the audio, that's her. But they're discussing Shanks and Whitebeard meeting, and then they are also discussing the fact that Crocodile, they're distressed over the fact that Crocodile was defeated at Alabaster by Luffy, and they're trying to figure out, well, he's been dismissed from the Seven Warlords, so what do we wish to do with that? And, not too sure about that, what's going on at that point in time. They're discussing matters within the world. Again, I don't remember if that's the exact time frame that we get like them introduced as like the highest authority in the world, but they're there. And then we get to Long Ring Longland. And they then hear that Aokiji snuck away from Marine headquarters, and they're disappointed in him. And, he's just, he needs to be careful with his rank or he may lose it. Admittedly, we are well aware of the fact that the Gorosei do not particularly care for Aokiji's brand of justice, but he's powerful enough and has enough regard with the public that they can't really get rid of him at that point in time. Don't really have too much of them there, but then we have the post-Enies Lobby arc. And, after the Enies Lobby raid, where they're, of course, aware of the fact that, Straw Hat and the others managed to escape, managed to save Robin, that they destroyed the Island of Justice, although technically the destruction of the Island of Justice, or at the very least, the razing it to the ground, while the Straw Hats are responsible for some of the damage that was done. And the giant giraffe with swords cutting through their giant building is also part of what happened. The Buster Call that gets put on the island by Spondum, because Spondum is an idiot. By the way, I'm sure at whatever point in time, if we ever do get to, I'm loving so far the live action One Piece so far. I've watched several episodes so far. I haven't finished the whole thing at this point in time, but I'm loving it so far. By the time this goes up, I will most definitely have watched all the episodes. But if whatever point in time, if we do get to like Enies Lobby in the arc, in the live action, if that ever happens, the Den Mushi for that is going to be so adorable. For the golden one, that's going to be so cute. But back to this. Sorry. So there's that, and they're just not happy about the fact that, the Straw Hats managed to do that. They're also not happy about the fact that Shanks and Whitebeard have, successfully had a meeting. That worries them, because anytime two Yonko have a meeting, and, we saw the similar things happen when they got kind of nervous about Big Mom and Kaido meeting up. Then kind of the next bit that we get with them is the post-war arc. So this is after everything happened with Marineford and, Impel Down and everything like that. We know that they were probably informed of, in Sabaody when Charlos was punched and everything like that by Luffy, and they're like, oh, this kid again. They were probably informed of that, but, beyond sending out Kizaru and everything like that, I don't think they particularly had much to do with that. But yeah, during the post-war arc, they are, of course, talking about Luffy and how he could potentially become a huge threat. It's like, well, he managed to, he's punched the Celestial Dragon. He's defeated 2 of our warlords. He's managed to successfully break into and out of Impel Down. And he managed to escape this war with the help of not only a former warlord in Jinbei, but the remnants of a Yonko's crew with Marco and the others helping him escape, and being helped by Buggy, and being helped by Law. So there's a lot of that. And I think it's War Curie that specifically states that the power structure had almost completely collapsed. And now they have to fill 3 vacant Warlord of the Sea positions, which we know end up getting filled with Buggy, Law, and Weevil at that point in time. Subsequently, those get filled in with those specific people after they each have their auditions. And I'm quite certain that while Sakazuki may have a bit of a say in allowing someone to become a warlord, it is most definitely the Celestial Dragons, specifically the Gorosei themselves, that make that decision and stuff to go with that. There, of course, also they themselves become aware, if they weren't already, become aware of the relationship between Garp and Dragon and Luffy. And it's just like, oh god, this damn family. Oh, that family. Oh, that family's gonna give you guys a lot of headaches. Just you wait for it. So we know about that. We know that they probably are not happy with the Luffy showing up back at Marineford again and ringing the bell and then leaving. Probably not happy about that by any means. And then, of course, they have to discuss what's going on with Blackbeard and his activities in the New World. And they have to deal with the supernova and everything and how they've had issues already. And the fact that now that Whitebeard's gone, now who's kind of take up the current setup of being a Yonko. Probably Marco held the position for a little bit of time until the Payback War happened, and then he got defeated, and then Blackbeard became the new Yonko at that point in time. But the remaining, the remnants of Whitebeard's crew, led by Marco and everything, and then of course they're very concerned about the Will of D and everything like that, and that some of that has been able to reach the public a little bit more as of late. She is a very sleepy puppy. I thought she slept well last night. I'm pretty sure you can hear her snoring in the background. And then, we don't hear too much about them until Dressrosa. After the 2-year time skip, we don't hear about them during, the return to Sabaody and Fishman Island, and during, Punk Hazard and everything. We don't really hear about them again until Dressrosa, where they do have a meeting with Sakazuki, and it's him discussing stuff about Doflamingo at that point in time, because he's like, why would you allow Doflamingo to, pretend that he's, to say that he is no longer a warlord and then still be a warlord and do all of this? Why are you allowing this? Because he does not like any of the warlords, and he would prefer to roast all of them over an open pile of magma if he could. An open pit of magma. And so that's Sakazuki's opinion there. Some of them I would agree with that about, but not the majority, but not all of them. Doflamingo can get roasted for all I care. And Crocodile's a little bit more entertaining. Not that Doflamingo isn't entertaining, but still. And, so they're discussing everything there that's going on with Doflamingo and Dressrosa and everything. And, they have Cypher Pole and Dressrosa doing different things there. They are not happy at all about what happens in Dressrosa, in the fact that, Doflamingo gets defeated, his actions are revealed to the world, and that it does not look good on the world's government, that they allowed him to continue to be a warlord and let him become the king of Dressrosa, 10 years ago at that point in time, and everything else there, that they allowed the Riku family, who had been the custodian, the custodial rulers of the country for the last, 800-ish years, allowed them to just be dethroned and everything like that, and their king tortured, and their people tortured, and their princesses, captured and enslaved to a degree, or held hostage in certain cases, and different things like that. And of course, all of that's revealed to the world, and they are very not happy with Fujitora when he does his bowing, and, he allows Straw Hat to escape. They're not happy about that, but they're also very not happy about the fact that, Fujitora bows in front of Rikujol III on camera on Snail in front of the entire world and has that transmitted almost everywhere in the world. And then, of course, it ends up in the papers, and that information is spread around the world. And that does not make the world government, and specifically the Gorosei, look good. So they are not happy about that at all at that point in time. Again, don't really want your public image smeared that much, but, you know, hey, you're the ones that allowed this to happen. Just because he was keeping your money from you. You know, so there's all of that going on there. And of course, they're not happy with Fujitora for the fact that he allows this, you know, Luffy and the others to escape. Luffy and his new allies to escape. And then we get Reverie. And during the Reverie is, of course, when we have, you know, Shanks, who appears to be Shanks, pretty sure it's Shanks, shows up at Marie Joie in the Room of Authority with the Gorosei and has a conversation with them and wants to discuss a certain pirate. Now, whether that's Luffy, whether that's Blackbeard, whether that's Kaido, probably not Kaido, but Blackbeard or Luffy are the two main ones. Or Buggy, possibly. I don't know, maybe he was discussing Buggy. But, like, he wants to discuss a certain pirate and everything like that, and they're just very confused as to why he is there. It's like, you don't really have too much, say in global democracy or, you know, diplomacy, but what are you doing here? And they listen. Well, he talks and they supposedly listen. Whether or not they actually take his words into consideration is probably not what happened. It's like, hey, you might have a warlord. You may have a position opened up soon in the Yonko. Yeah, hey, I got a clown buddy that would be really good for that position. No. But we know that the Gorosei, you know, after they have their meeting with Shanks, that's when they end up going and meeting with Im-sama. And, you know, this is where, of course, where we get introduced to him and where they bow to him and everything like that. And they ask him which light he believes needs to be snuffed out. And, you know, we think that that's supposed to be like snuff out Blackbeard and Luffy and Shirahoshi, and then, you know, bring him Vivi, because Vivi seems to be something that Imu has an interest in. And that seems to have continued. But, you know, they ask which light needs to be snuffed out and all of that. They're also probably, you know, we also hear them discussing about a cleansing and discussing about, the Nefeltari family and Cobra specifically, and that he wants to discuss something with them, which I'll get to. But, you know, they're, you know, as I said, they mentioned cleansing and different things like that, which anytime someone mentions a cleansing and it's not like a spiritual cleansing, that's, you know, not really a good thing. Spiritual or medical cleansing, that's not really a good thing. And of course, they, just like the rest of the Celestial Dragons, refer to everything below the red line as the world below and everything. And then we have some other bits that happen. So during what happens technically during the Reverie, but it's just a continuation of, you know, stuff that we find out during the Wano arc at the end of Wano. But it's continuation of Reverie is where they do meet with Nefeltari Cobra. We also are aware of the fact that they are okay with the warlords being able to be disbanded because Im-sama deems that it's okay, so they allow it to happen, because that's what the different nations had agreed upon after Cobra and King Riku made their speeches and everything. But then they meet with Cobra, and that doesn't go well. He asks them questions that they do not want to answer, stuff about the original 20 families and the 19 that became the Celestial Dragons, and then he starts talking about, you know, Nefeltari Lily, and then that's when Im-sama shows up, and they're just like, Sir Cobra's still here. He's like, yep, I'm aware of it. Yeah, you're not making it out of here alive at that point in time. And we see this where, the different, you know, the Gorosei, of course, are still, you know, being subservient to Im-sama, and Im-sama is, of course, questioning Cobra and wanting to get more information out of him about what he knows about Lily's letter and about the Will of D and different things like that. And, of course, this is where it's revealed where it's Nefeltari D Lily in that regard. and that, you know, the D clan is part of, you know, that the Nefeltari family seems to be part of the D clan and everything in that regard. And then, of course, what ends up happening is they shoot Cobra. The Gorosei shoot Cobra. Sabo shows up. He kens them, just, you know, fire, you know, giant fire blast at the Gorosei, and ends up, you know, then ends up grabbing Cobra and trying to escape with Cobra, so that way they can both escape at that point in time. And this is, of course, when the Gorosei end up, you know, transforming into their different, you know, their devil fruit forms, which I broke down a bit more in the other video, and where they are, well, possible devil fruit forms. Most likely devil fruit forms. But where they transform and they're protecting Eam and they're protecting themselves and they attack Sabo, and where Cobra then, of course, sacrifices himself for Sabo, so that way Sabo can actually escape, even though Sabo gets, you know, hurt as well. And then they see that someone noticed what happened, and then, of course, that's Wapol, and then they have to chase after Wapol, and, of course, Wapol is trying to escape, and then, of course, they need to go after him, and then Wapol and Vivi, and they probably wanted Vivi to be captured by the, you know, by CPI Jazeera at that point in time, and they're probably the ones that told them to capture her, so that's why she was being captured by Lucci and Kaku and everything. Being held captive by Jabra at that point in time. And so we get to see all of that. And then we cut to where we find out about what actually happened in the Lelucia Kingdom, where they sent the giant sky laser weapon, the Mother Flame, and sent it to Lelucia, and they attacked Lelucia and just destroyed it. And just wiped it out, along with the royal family that was on the island and a good chunk of the population that was still on the island, even though Sabo and some of the others had managed to escape. They were on their way back to, you know, well, not Baltico, but they were going to go to Kamabaka at that point in time. And they're just like, okay, you know, okay, that the giant sky laser thing seems to work. And of course, we see that they're discussing the different revolutions that are happening on the other island, on several of the other islands, and how they sent out the Seraphim, the S-Croc, S-Hawk, or not S-Hawk, S-Crocodile, S-Gecko, and S-Flamingo to go and deal with them, along with several other members of, like, the Gods Knights and everything like that get sent to deal with them. They're also aware of the fact that things are going on with Onigashima at that point in time, with Luffy and the others, and the battle there, because they're getting updates from the CPI Jazeera agents that are there, you know, Guernica and Joseph and all of them that are there. They're getting updates from them as everything happens there, and they're, of course, ordered to try to capture Nico Robin again, and eliminate any other inconveniences, as they refer to the rest of the Straw Hats, and probably a majority of the other people that were there at the time. And, you know, we also know that during this time frame, they have to deal with, like, the Gods Knights are dealing with what happened with Milzigard and with Charlos and everything with that. And I highly doubt that the Gorosei particularly care that Milzigard is going to be, that Milzigard is, you know, executed and everything like that. We also have the moments where the Gorosei, during Luffy's battle with Kaido, where they had sent, is that Guernica that goes there? I think so. It's the one that has the nice hat. And where they send him, and he has to go and interrupt the fight between Luffy and Kaido, and which results in technically Luffy dying and then awakening. And then it's just like, well, you know, you probably would have had it awaken anyway, but yeah, now it definitely awoken. Now it's definitely awakened. And you know, they're talking about how it's the most ridiculous power in the world at that point in time for the Gumma Gumma no Mi powers, and how they're the ones that give us the actual name, the Hito Hito no Mi, model sun god Nika, and that Nika is the, you know, the god of liberation and everything, and all of that. So we get all of that, which we just got very recently in the anime and everything, and everything happens there. And they're also discussing the defeat of two emperors and the fact that, well, if both Big Mom and Kaido were defeated, then that's a huge amount of upheaval in the world because they were at least fairly known factors in the world. And Kaido was kind of working with the world government and everything like that because of Doflamingo and because of Orochi. Kaido was kind of working with the world government and giving them weapons at times. Also, I would not be surprised in the slightest if some of the world nobles got their hands on Smiles and tried to feed them to their slaves just in order to have more entertainment on their parts for having either slaves that have various different dispositions of different types of animals, or having the slaves that were basically just turned into pleasures and all they can do is smile and laugh at this point in time. That definitely seems like something that the Gorosei would, or maybe not necessarily the Gorosei themselves, but definitely something that the other celestial dragons would find a fair amount of entertainment out of. Although the celestial dragon, the Gorosei probably most definitely have slaves of their own at their own private residences or wherever they end up, wherever they specifically live. They may live in, Castle Pangea, or they may have their own separate homes, mansions, castles, whatever that they go to at the end of the day. But we don't know that yet. But yeah, they're discussing the hypothetical defeat of two emperors, which of course does result in the actual defeat of two emperors. Both Big Mom and Kaido are defeated during the Battle of Onigashima. And so that's like, okay, now we got to deal with other stuff. And we know that they are not happy about the fact that Morgan's printed the information about probably Cobra being assassinated, even though Sabo was the one that got pinned with it, not them. We know that they are not happy about that, but also if Morgan's prints about what happened about what happened at Lelucia, then that's not going to go well either. I have a very snory puppy behind me. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but she's very snory. So they're not happy about that at all, and they don't want, they try to get Morgans to not print certain things, and they don't, and Morgans doesn't agree to that. Then we have a bit of non-canon stuff. The first actual non-canon appearance we get of them is in Film Red, which actually ends up resulting in us getting some interest, some information given to us. So during Film Red, again, this is non-canon information, but it is interesting in regards to how kind of things work. During Film Red, they of course end up watching Uta's concert that is being broadcast from Elysia, and they're like, okay, well, her being Shanks' daughter means she has the possibility of being a member of the Figureland family. And it's, of course, revealed throughout the course of the movie that no, Uta was adopted by Shanks. She's not his biological daughter. But they're like, oh, well, if she is a member of that family, then we don't really want her to end up, we may not be able to act against her as much as we would like, because that is acting against the blood of a celestial dragon. And of course, I don't remember if they specifically find out that she is not, or if that's just something that's like revealed to, the audience in general. And of course, Luffy may know, but like the rest of the red-haired pirates are aware of it, that she's not actually, Shanks' biological daughter. But they also seem to be aware of Top Musica and Uta's connection with it. And so they may be somewhat aware of what actually happened on Elysia, 10 years ago or whatever, what happened with that in the storyline 12 years ago, whatever, where she released Top Musica. They may be somewhat aware of what happened there, or they can put two and two together. I mean, for as high and mighty as the Gorosei are, they are very intelligent as far as we can tell. For ones that are in charge of the world government, I would like to hope that they are intelligent. Evil, yes, but intelligent. The two are not mutually exclusive. Just like, supervillains. Like a Doctor Doom from Marvel. But what ends up happening is, of course, when Ucha's doing her concert, 70%, they're kind of estimating that it could result in 70% of the world's population being wiped out because of Uta's world. And they're like, oh, well, that would not be good for us, because that's a good chunk of our population wiped out, and that's a good chunk of our resources wiped out that we then can't recover as easily. and there's probably lots of Marines that are watching this concert as well, and that they may end up getting, resulted in trapped and everything like that in the world as well. And I think they're smart enough to not have the sound on while the concert is going on, because it's the act of hearing Uta's voice while she's using her powers that puts you into the sleep and into Uta's world. So they don't have the concert actually. They don't have the sound coming through on the Den Den Mushi. They just have the visuals coming in. And of course, they're in, Lucci is in the room with them. Lucci's in the room where it happened. And so we're getting some information there and discussions there. And we know that they send Kizaru and Fujitora in order to deal with her. And of course, they're not worried about any of the casualties that may come of it. If Uta is killed, along with any of the others that are the concert goers at her concert, they're not really worried about that. But, they are at least somewhat relieved, I'm assuming, when Shank shows up and when he's able to defeat Tot Musica with the help of the Straw Hats on the other side. That they're able to defeat Tot Musica, so I think they're probably somewhat relieved about that, but they're also like, this is not a fun day for us. And that's kind of where that, ends, non-canon section ends, but I did at least want to point that out. They also witness Uta releasing everybody from her music world and everything like that, so that way they can go back to, their own lives and everything. And then we get to the current arc, which is current stuff for Egghead Island. So we become aware of the fact that York has made a deal with them that if they save her, that she will make sure that, that if they make her a celestial dragon, because she's the embodiment of greed and desire for Vegapunk, that she will work for them. And they, of course, made this deal with her. And then they also send Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy in order to try to assassinate the rest of the Vegapunks and York at first. And then, of course, everything happens there. And, we get a lot of stuff that happens with that, where, now the island is under siege because St. J. Garcia Saturn was on his way there with Kizaru. And, they are intending to... Pretty girl, did you wake up? Did you enjoy your nap? I'm almost done. And what ends up happening is, of course, we know that, J. Garcia Saturn is on his way there, which he's the first one that we actually get their flippin' name for all of, going on 20 years that we've known about them. We finally get his name, which just sparks a whole bunch of, theories about what are all the other ones' names and everything like that, and all of that. But he is on his way there to meet with Vegapunk, or technically pick up York and get any other, get the Seraphim. I wonder if they had to draw straws to determine who was going to go, although admittedly J. Garcia Saturn is the one that is in charge of science and defense, so he would probably be the one that would be best fit to be able to try to figure out how to get around and deal with Vegapunk's different inventions. So there's that. Although how much he would understand about it is a little bit left up for debate, but he's probably at least the one that's the best equipped in order to deal with it. So we know about that. We know that he's left, and that's the first time we've seen any of them not at Marie Joie. And he goes there with Kizaru, which is, of course, has now currently resulted in the fact that there was a siege being laid on Egghead. And, of course, now that has resulted into an actual all-out war with, Kizaru making his way onto the island. But we have various moments during the conversation with either where Kizaru is discussing with J. Garcia Saturn about what to do. And he's like, well, have you met Vegapunk before? And he's like, yes, I've met him a long time ago. The thing is, the interesting thing about that conversation is that we both know that Kizaru and J. Garcia Saturn have past relationships with Vegapunk. Kizaru probably a bit more of a personable one with him, given the fact that we just got in the flashback with Kizaru being around Vegapunk probably shortly after he started working for the world government and them finding Sentomaru and everything like that, and that Kizaru would have been at Egghead Island or one of Vegapunk's previous bases. having, a bunch of, tests run on him and stuff like that, so that way Vegapunk can research how his lasers work. So he probably has a pretty decent relationship with Vegapunk. But the thing is that J. Garcia Saturn, along with the rest of the Gorosei, J. Garcia Saturn specifically, probably have had various interactions with Vegapunk where they are, asking him about different inventions and trying to request different things from him that might, keep the other celestial dragons happy, like making the actual dragons and different things like that. And, Vegapunk probably has to, like, give them updates on his science stuff as well and his inventions. So, they probably deal with him a lot. Probably J. Garcia Saturn more than the other four, more than anything, but still, and a lot of that probably is done via, Den Den mission communication and everything. Or possibly if Vegapunk does travel to, Marijois every now and then to give them, like, updates on projects and, his progress and everything like that. But back to Egghead. So we have the siege that happens, and then of course they're getting information from Lucci, who's, able to sneak them out information and everything like that. And of course we have the conversation where the Gorosei have the conversation with York, where it's her just, like, screaming about, save me, I'm sorry, please save me, yes, I can do this, yes, I can get you this, you need to protect the, the Seraphim, and the Punk Records, and me, and the power plant, and all of this other stuff, and please save me, and everything. So we have all of that going on with York, and of course they're like, okay, fine, we'll get you saved and everything, and yes, we'll... Hi, I told you I was almost done, pretty girl. Oh no, she found a toy. Maybe not. I don't know. Hi. Yes, hi, pretty girl. My pretty girl. I'm almost done. I'm almost done about talking about the 5 angry old men. Okay, I'll pet you while I talk. And what ends up happening is, of course, the siege and all of that, and, they get the information from Lucci so they can start trying to attack and start going after them. They know that Bonnie's there, and Saturn just kind of calls her a little girl, or she's not, well, he doesn't see her as a threat anymore, I don't think. She's not useful to them anymore. She's not a pawn that they can use as much as they would like. And so there's that. And then, of course, Kizaru starts his assault. We also have the moment where, Saturn is basically like, oh, yeah, you have that relationship with Sentomaru. Yeah, I'm going to need you to ignore the fact that you have that relationship with him and just, go in and deal with him. Humans can be replaced and all of that. He's the one that gives the order to have the different... have the different researchers and such that were fleeing Egghead Island to have their ships sank and destroyed and everything. So, again, he, just like the rest of the Gorosei and just like the majority of the Celestial Dragons, see humans as nothing more than insects that can be used for their entertainment or for their benefit. So that's pretty much the general consensus we seem to get from the Gorosei themselves and from the Celestial Dragons. So we'll see how everything goes with Egghead Island. But that's what I have so far in regards to the Gorosei, the 5 Elder Stars, the 5 Elder Planets, the 5 Elders, the 5 Angry Old Men, who we now have names for. So that's what we have. The next one for the series should be where I do Imu-sama, where it's like I'll talk about, like, the information that we do know about Imu-sama and then some of the theories that I've found that are kind of interesting in regards to Imu-sama. Will you stop it? I'm almost done. Yes, pretty girl, I know. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!